Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee here. I'm excited to be joining you today to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is being out of your comfort zone. And the reason why I talk about this topic quite a bit is oftentimes I'm asking people to think very disruptively, and that's really hard. And people come to me and say, well, how can we make this easier? How do we actually make it so that we can do all these great disruptive things, grow like crazy, innovate, break things, go out there and feel totally 100% comfortable with it? I hate to break the news to you, but there's no such thing as doing amazing things like this and being in your comfort zone. And so what I want to talk about today is how do you actually do this? How do you actually step out of your comfort zone? What does that mean? What does it look like? And in particular, how would you actually go about doing this? Because this is not an easy thing to do. So I want to talk about that and give a couple examples from personal life and also other companies and organizations. And then we'll spend a bit of time at the end talking about how you actually do this. So just to welcome the people in, by all means, I would love to hear what you are doing, how you're thinking about being out of your comfort zone. And if you could, just share in the chat where you're from, but also give an example, a quick example of when you stepped out of your comfort zone. What did it feel like? I just want that feeling. Was it fun? Was it exhilarating? Was it exciting? Or is it like, or were you like most people like me? It was absolutely terrifying and really uncomfortable because I think in so many ways, what we find is that it's both exhilarating and exciting, but it's also something that it's absolutely hard to do. And so this is one of the first things I would love to talk about, which is thinking about why is it this way? Why is it that that comfort levels are such a key part for us to be thinking about this? And as to be a disruptor, to do the great things you want to do, you want to be really aware of what is your comfort level and how far can you go out of it before you start feeling really stressed out. And I'll give you an example from what I think are some of the people who do this on an everyday basis, and that is athletes and artists. If you think about an athlete, your whole goal is to go further, go faster, last longer, to constantly stretch yourself out of your comfort zone, because that is where growth happens. And for artists too, as well, whether you're a musician or if you're a painter in the fine arts, in the performing arts, the whole idea of stepping out of your comfort zone is to try new things, because that is how you extend your craft. I'm a classically trained pianist, and I recall practicing for hours every day. In high school, I was competitive. I would practice routinely 3 hours a day after school. Instead of doing sports, I did arts. I did my piano. And I would be sitting there trying to constantly work on this one passage over and over again, slowing down, speeding up, to try to get it faster and faster, get it better, to try to get to it being performed perfectly. And knowing that I would never achieve perfection, but it was the craft and pushing myself into learning a new piece. So where are the places where you can actually do this? Well, I like to say that this is where the magic actually happens. And so I love this graphic. I'm just going to share it here. And it is one of my favorite graphics. I end almost all of my speeches and my workshops with this one particular picture, that the magic happens when you step outside of that comfort zone. And it can be exhilarating again, but it can also be really scary. And I love this because the reason why we do this, though, is because this is where the magic is going to happen, whatever that magic is. It could be small things, it could be big things, but we know we have to get out there, because that's where growth with a big G, growth internally as well as externally in our environments happens. So what I want to talk about today is, how do you do this? How do you stretch yourself, but not get stressed by it? I talked about this last week in my last live session, which is how do we overcome self-doubt and anxiety and not get into a situation where we're stressed. Stress is when all that anxiety, all that worry weighs on you, and over time it starts manifesting itself in a physical reaction. That's not a good place to be. So we want to be out of our comfort zone, but we don't want to do it in such a way that we are stressing ourselves out. So I wanted to give one example of how I actually did this. Let me just go on to my next slide. Let me just get to it here. And this is this is a scene from Harvard Business School. I went there in 1991, and I was really debating whether to go there because it has a reputation for being very hard charging, kind of a hostile environment to women and minorities, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was looking at all these other business schools, traveling around the country, just visiting them. And one of the things I realized was that Harvard was a really competitive school. And I love visiting schools like Stanford. It's in California. It's sunny. It's warm. People are super nice. They call it the farm for a reason. But I realized that Harvard Business School was going to be the better school for me because of this kind of environment that you see in this picture. It's 90 other amazing students in a classroom, and you have to raise your hand constantly, try to get in. And while I felt comfortable as a leader and as a business person in one-on-one meetings and small group meetings, even speaking in front of large groups because of my performance background, this environment where between like 50 and 100 people, where you have to fight to get in, where you have to be confident and speaking up, even when you don't feel confident. And so I knew that for 2 years, I would be completely out of my comfort zone. And this was exactly what I needed from my training, that I needed not just only the knowledge, but also to work on this skill. Because as a woman and as a person of color, the last thing I felt comfortable doing, frankly, was to raise my hand and stick out even more. It just felt so uncomfortable. And I was blessed with the most amazing section of 90 other people who were incredibly supportive of each other, that made it safe for me to be able to come out of my comfort zone and to push this edge of my learning and my experience. So that's what I want to talk about today is how do you do this? How do you create that sense of extending that comfort zone, that place where you can feel at least not completely vulnerable so that you can push yourself into that comfort zone? It's extending that bubble. And that's how you actually do this. How do you push yourself out of your comfort zone and into that other place? So I want to talk about 3 things. And the first thing is to try something new every single day, to make getting out of your comfort zone a habit, so that when you're trying something new, it just feels like, okay, this is something that I've done before, but yeah, I recognize this feeling that it's a little bit antsy. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to be able to do it. So it could be small things. It could be taking a different route to home every day. It could be talking to strangers. It could be trying a new food. But whatever it is, definitely try to do something different. I remind myself by doing this. This is literally the mug that I drink out of every single morning. And it says, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. I have the same quote on my desk right underneath my monitor. And I do this as a reminder to myself that I have to push myself out of my comfort zone all the time, because otherwise I'm going to get comfortable being in my comfort zone rather than being at the very edge of it. So I think in so many ways, this is one of the hardest things to do. So I would love to hear from you. Just put into the chat, what are the things that you do on a regular basis to push yourself out of the comfort zone? Again, these could be really interesting and fun things. Again, before we were all shut in because of COVID-19, it may be trying a new place to eat or going to a new experience or meeting new people. But share, how are you doing this today? How do you plan to continue? How have you pushed yourself out of your comfort zone? And we all know that over the past month and 2, we have all been pushed out of our comfort zone. This is not a natural state for us to be being in. And so as we go into the restart area, how do we start thinking about that in a different way? How are we going to live out of our comfort zone so that we can start growing tremendously? The next thing that I would say to be thinking out of your comfort zone is to think about what is inside of your comfort zone and what's outside of it. What is it that holds us back from being at that very edge? To be really clear about what it is that we fear. And I'll be talking about it a little bit later is how do we fear losing control? What are the fears that we have around failing? What are the fears and concerns of the things that could go wrong if we step out of that comfort zone? And this is literally, there is a comfort zone, this bubble that we have put ourselves in our lives today, literally at our front door. We feel safe inside of our homes, but not necessarily outside of it. We're going to have to deal with this in a very physical way very soon as we all restart our economies. So this is about defining, in order to think positively about fear, you actually have to be able to address it. And this is where fear, instead of becoming a weakness and something holding you back, becomes something that becomes powerful because it's something you can act against and do something about. So what does it mean to actually deal with this? One of the ways that I think about this is to be what I call a realist optimist. And I find that many disruptors do this day in, day out, which is why they are so able to thrive with being out of their comfort zone. They can see the positive aspects of being outside of it, but they're also realistic. They're being very pragmatic about what are the barriers to me feeling comfortable about this? What are the fears that I have? And they go systematically through and address each of those issues, because that is how you can start moving out of that comfort zone. So I'll give you an example. One of the things that I love doing is jumping off of high places. This started a long time ago as a kid because I love being on roller coasters and I love that kind of G-force feeling when you go over the edge and you know you're perfectly safe. You're strapped into a perfectly fine roller coaster. But I just love that feeling. And the first time I met a rope course, it was absolutely terrifying because one of the things I had to do was to jump off this ledge. It's called the leap of faith. And down below is like my family, and they're like really little kids at the time. Holding onto the rope with my belay straps on, keeping me safe from hitting the ground. So I have to trust them that I can leap off this edge 40 feet off the ground and be perfectly safe. Even now, I'm feeling my palms sweating and my toes are tingling because of this feeling of what it's like to be on that edge. And in the beginning, it was absolutely terrifying, but now I find it exhilarating. And so if one of the things you're afraid of is jumping off heights. Well, one of the things I decided to do is one day I wanted to go skydiving. And so I worked up to it, jumped off these ledges, did higher jumps, would go on to different places. And then this past fall, I did some skydiving. So this is me jumping out of an airplane, attached to somebody else, being completely 100% safe and loving every single minute of it. And so I go back to one of the key things that you can do to be thinking positively about these fears to step out of your comfort zone is don't try to do it all at once. Really think about taking these small steps. And that is my third point, is to have a plan, to have an idea of what does it mean? What are the benefits of getting out of your comfort zone? And systematically putting a plan together, because that is how you go about actually doing this on a regular basis. Because when we think about doing it every day, thinking positively about these fears, and then making it a practice and actually thinking about the small little baby steps that you have to take to get to that point, you then actually have a chance of actually, again, growing your capacity to being out of your comfort zone. So I just want to pause for a minute before I close out, because I'm just looking at some of these comments here. And thank you, everybody, for commenting on here. I'm hearing from Hannah that, when you're stepping out of your comfort zone, it's exhilarating and also scary. And one of the things that it's so difficult to do is to think about all the challenges that you have on a daily basis. How are you going to actually find those things, find those opportunities to actually go through and explore them? So I just want to give one other quick example because, again, as somebody who writes books, who does speaking all the time, people ask, wow, you make it, you seem to really enjoy it. For example, speaking is one of the things. I am very comfortable speaking in front of a group and just getting up there because I've done it so many times. And that comfort zone and that the way I push it out there, though, is what you don't see is this excitement that I have now. But instead of looking at it as a fearful experience, that excitement, that fear is now being channeled into excitement because I have the confidence to know that nothing really seriously is going to go wrong. And even when things go wrong, and I've shared before, I actually fell off a stage in the middle of a speech. That's about the worst thing that you could do. Just like literally drop off the stage because I stepped back too far and fell off the back. Not the kind of dramatic exit that I had been planning. So I had to just get back on the stage and continue going. But if that's the worst thing that could ever happen, then I can take a lot of risks. So every time I give a speech now, every time I'm doing things, even talking about these lives, I look for areas that I can extend my comfort zone, places where I can tell stories like that, talk about my own experience, try new material, because that again is where life begins. For me, being able to develop that connection with people, to be able to share some of the knowledge, even though I may be kind of vulnerable, not sure if it's going to work or not, is going to be a very, very great experience. I think in the end, what really holds us back oftentimes from moving out of our comfort zone is this fear of failure. I'll be talking about failure a lot, and especially now in these very turbulent times, how we think about and deal with failure is probably the most difficult thing. Because nobody ever goes out there and says, I really want to fail today. I mean, do we really say that to ourselves? No, we don't. We say, we want to go out there and do good work. We want to be successful. We want to win. Nobody goes out there and intentionally tries to fail. But we also know that going out there and trying to make a difference, trying to grow, trying to move out of our comfort zone, there will be times when we don't succeed. We're going to fall off that stage. We're going to things are not going to work out. And it's how we, again, look at that failure. Do we look at it as something debilitating and it's going to make us retreat back into our comfort zone even more? Or is it something that we learn from? And we look at failure as a learning experience? Do we look at it as a teacher for how do we successfully do better next time to be able to live at that edge of the comfort zone? Because it's only when we can do this, when we can live at that comfort zone, outside of that comfort zone, right at that very edge, where we're going to accomplish amazing things. And we all know the fight that is ahead of us. Over the next few months, we're going to be called upon to do incredible things that we've never done before, to push our fears around physical concerns out of our minds and be able to come back into the space where we are actually able to function again. And it's going to require all of us to be able to step out of our comfort zone. So I encourage you to start now, to start thinking about what does it mean to live outside of your comfort zone, and to do this every single day, to gain the confidence so that you know that feeling when you see it, that you can push past that fear, that little bit of concern that's holding you back, and be able to look realistically and positively, optimistically at the potential that can come from that. And make a plan today about all the challenging things that you have to have. And instead of thinking about them as insurmountable and way too difficult to do, think about taking that first one small step into the direction and stepping outside of your comfort zone. I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for watching. And I encourage you also to come and check out this group that I started called Quantum Networks. It is a place where we help other leaders and help each other step out of our comfort zones to be able to create the kind of disruptions that we want to so desperately create that change in the world that we want to see. So again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon on this channel. Take care. Bye-bye.